I want to put a spotlight on what is happening in our kids, sometimes in the sanctity of their own bedrooms, when moms think the lights are out and everything's safe and good and healthy, and what is happening now is just so abhorrent. There's many scary stories, horror stories out there. So what we can do today is get the message out to parents of what they need to be aware of, what they should be looking for, but also let them know what a state like New York was going to do to protect them with a mom who's a governor. And this is passionate to me. So let's get started. We have Liz from Common Sense Media, and I want to thank you for being an incredible partner on all of our endeavors, building the momentum, getting the education awareness out there, and helping us, because we'll keep at it, whether it's, the cell phone distraction devices in schools ban. I know it didn't make me too popular the first couple months with kids, but I'll tell you, I get more thank yous from doing that than anything I ever thought, because kids are now coming alive in school. And they're making, sometimes for the first time in their lives, a friend, which is sad to think of, but now it's, they're getting their childhood back, and, doing things that we would expect them to do, and playing games at lunch and during recess, and talking and making eye contact, and, not being absorbed into this other world, which is, it can be so dark and dangerous, and the bullying and, just the anxiety and the depression that is so prevalent. So I want to make sure as our kids get older that it's a world which is more like the old-fashioned days. So I don't want to sound like an old-timer here, but we didn't have to worry about that. Even my kids, who are millennials, did not have to worry about that. And I've got little grandkids who I definitely don't want to have their parents have to worry about this either. So why don't you take it away?
Great. Thank you so much, Governor. Thank you, before we begin, just for being an amazing champion for New York kids and families. Really, really appreciate it. Common Sense Media, we were really proud to put together this conversation today with parents and young people to talk about this really important issue. We're very supportive of your proposal because it would help rein in predators and scammers and protect kids online on these seemingly innocent gaming platforms and social media platforms. You'll hear from parents in a few minutes. This group in particular here is really concerned about already what their kids are experiencing online and what they could experience online in the coming years. And that's why we're so supportive of your proposal, because it would do so much to protect our kids on these gaming platforms. A good way that I like to think about it is, in the real world, we have a lot of safety standards in place for things like toys and for food and even pajamas, right? But why would the online world really be any different? And so in New York, we've really led on this issue. We've been leading, and this proposal really builds on that leadership, and that's why we're so excited for this conversation today. And we're going to be with you and ensure that we get it passed this year.
Thank you.
Yeah. And now I'm going to turn it over to Kristen, who's going to take us through the next part of the discussion.
Thanks for that, Liz, and thank you, Governor Hochul, for everything you've done thus far and for framing this so that we understand what's really at stake for our kids. So, as Liz mentioned, my name's Kristen Fridella. I sit on the Parent Advisory Council for Common Sense Media, and I'm a mom. I've brought with me my 8-year-old daughter, Rory.
Hi, Rory.
Rory is incredibly tech curious, and she's already noticing the way that we all interact with our tech and are sometimes consumed by it. And like you, my most important job is being a parent, and I have to tell you, I'm so grateful for everything you've done that's helping us to make parenting easier and allowing us to not just play the role of police, which is a hard role. And so I come to this conversation with a really long view of parenting. Rory has 2 siblings that are much older than her. I have a 20-year-old stepdaughter, Clancy, and an 18-year-old stepson, Finnegan. And during the pandemic, they started to use their devices a lot more. Their cell phones became lifelines for them so that they could connect socially during a time that was really isolating. But we also saw all the downsides as well. So things like anxiety and things like addictive behavior and sleep impact. And, one of the things that we saw that was the worst was once the world opened up, it was harder for them to connect with other people. They tended to hide behind their phone in socially challenging situations when they got nervous. And so I'm really hopeful that the phone ban in schools is helping that, and I'm certain that it is. And so, it really changed the way that I think about technology. Not in like a binary good, bad way, but in a way where I realize we need guardrails. And I want Rory and kids like Rory to have those guardrails. I want it so that she can be online and be exploring and be learning, and I'm not worried all the time that there's some predator trying to get in touch with her. And before I became a parent, and for part of the time that I was a parent, I spent a lot of time in the tech space. I spent 20 years at Google, where I worked on their education team. And though I am still a tech optimist, I recognize that these platforms are built for engagement, right? Not to optimize child safety.
Right.
So that's left to us, and we can't do it alone. And so I just want to again say thank you for making sure that we're not doing it alone.
No. What we're talking about is, even this year we're proposing automatic default settings for privacy on all the sites, the gaming sites, the social media sites. So parents don't have to be like, I wonder what my child is on now. How do I get in there and like disable this? And who can think like that? I mean, you don't know what you don't know. Like, you don't know what sites are out there. So for children under 18, we're telling the companies you have to have an automatic default position, so just help parents know that their kids are safe without the stress of having to figure it all out. So I think that's going to be a big one.
It's a relief.
No one have to think about it anymore.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, we're really excited to be able to have this conversation here today with all of these parents to talk about their experience as parents and watching their kids online. So I'm going to pass over to Yumi to tell us a little bit about how this is impacting her daughters.
Sure. Hi.
Hi, Yumi.
Nice to meet you. My name is Yumi Kobayashi, and I live in Brooklyn, New York. And I have two girls. One is 6th grade, another is 3rd grade. So, as you mentioned, I have two personal stories to share with you today regarding Roblox. One of it is that one of my friend's nephew was 2 years ago. He was in high school, and he met someone online through chats and started exchanging messages. And it lends to him sending some personal pictures and videos of him. And before he realized this person was a predator, it was too late. His parents called the police, but nothing was really done. So he really suffered from anxiety and depression afterwards. And I have another story to tell you personally. So my daughter, who's 11 now, she started playing Roblox 2 years ago. And one day she had a play date. Her friend came over. They started playing games together. And I overheard one of her friends said, "Oh, this girl wants to talk to me." And I said, it alarmed me. So I said, "Do you know this girl?" And she goes, "No, she just sent me a message." So it turned out that her profile was created by her older brother. So chat was enabled. So to your point, it's really up to our parents to making sure all the settings are right and privacy is on for the kids. So it's really critical for someone like you to come with this proposal to protect the children for us. And one more thing before I pass on to you, is I just want to thank you for the device ban at school. One of my good friends is a high school teacher in Brooklyn, and she was saying how students are so different last year and this year because of the device. Before, her class ends early, kids go straight to the device, complete silence in the classroom. Right now, class ends early, kids chatting and interacting.
I love to hear that.
Yes.
One of my favorite stories is Governor, just knowing that kids are being kids again.
Yes, so thank you, Governor, and thanks for your time today.
So, Jessie, why don't you tell us a little bit about how this topic impacts you and your two teenage sons, including Dean, who's here with you today.
Absolutely. Hi, Governor. I'm Jessie Haynes, and mom here in New York, and I'm here with my son, Dean, who's 13, 7th grade, and I have an older son who's 16 and in 10th grade. And yeah, the challenges of raising kids in this digital age are very real. We've been really lucky. We haven't faced a bad incident yet, but members of our community have. Obviously, we just heard two really sad stories, and so I'm on the alert. The job is on me as the mom to be the vigilant one, to be wondering, to be asking. And I work and I'm busy. And Dean is 13. He's like off doing his own thing. We can't be there at every minute. And I think it's really like not fair that the onus is on us. Like when I have a car, you know, and I just assume that the airbags are there. Like I don't have to like go and install them myself just so that the thing is safe. And I kind of feel like online should work the same way, right? Like we should just feel like we're getting something that by default is safe because we're all busy and it's hard and complicated to go in and figure out how to change the settings or do whatever it is on top of just dealing with the screen time and all the other challenges of life. So I am so happy that you are taking this approach of safety as default. It just seems so logical and so necessary so that kids can just be kids and enjoy their friends online. Parents don't have to be constantly policing, although we do enough like, okay, time to get off the screen. And so I'm so grateful for you approaching this in such a thoughtful way and really seeing parents and all the challenges that we're facing at this moment. So thank you.
Daniel, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've seen and how this is impacting your daughter?
Definitely. So I'm Daniel. I'm a Yonkers resident. I'm a single father. I'm a talent manager by occupation. I'm also one of the co-founders of an NPO called Pharmacares here in New York State. On the topic of being a single father, my daughter's 13. She's in 8th grade. Avid basketball player. Everything basketball, anything having to do with basketball, she's there. And the other thing is hanging out with her friends. Of course, being 13, hanging out with your friends is everything. I want to touch on what you said before. It's nothing like what it was for me growing up, hanging out with friends. It was let's escape the house, let's get as far away from our parents as possible, and commune together. The way she hangs out is on Roblox. Our experience on Roblox has been pretty smooth, I would say, but that doesn't take away from the fear and the my having to check in with her. So when she first played Roblox, there were some, I would say, guardrails put up by like older cousins and nephews, like, no, you're going to put this on a private server. A lot of information that people aren't privy to.
That's right.
So for me, I would have to chime in with her, and I was telling her I'd have to chime in with her, like I'd pick maybe 2 days out of the week, let's go get some ice cream. And then we'd sit down like, so, anything crazy happen on Roblox? And she'd see right through it and be like, no, of course not. And I was like, if you heard some profanity or if you heard this or you heard that, and she still would have the like, no, nothing ever happens. So for me, this is extremely important because to touch on what you were saying too is you deal with enough being a parent, and especially being the parent of a 13-year-old child in New York. I go through enough anxiety with just everyday life. So having to then implement the conversation, because there's other conversations to be had, as we all know at that age, having to incorporate that in conversation, or even having to sneak, like, let me sign on to your, no one has the time for that. So what you're doing is extremely important, and it alleviates a lot of the stress that we already face as parents. So definitely want to commend you on that, for sure.
I remember my daughter at 13, like, she turned 18, yes, everything got good again. So my sympathies, and it's an exciting time, and it's an exciting time to be a parent of a teenager, to see them evolve into, someone who's going to be your adult friend eventually. You don't see that then. And I remember hearing from a friend who was counseling me how to get through a teenage daughter and a teenage son. It was like the traits that you like the least in a teenager, you're going to admire most in adults, like the independence and the strong-willed and having opinions. But when you're trying to just keep it all together when they're still at home, it's like, okay, this is a lot to handle, right? It's a lot to handle. So thanks for sharing that.
Thank you, Daniel. We're going to pause while the press leaves. Thank you, Governor Hochul.
Yeah, this is great.
Great.
Wrapped up a very productive session on one of my top priorities, and that is keeping New York's children safe. And I want to thank Liz Foley, the Senior Director of Advocacy at Common Sense Media. Common Sense Media has been a godsend to us, helping us formulate the right policies and focusing on building coalitions and advocacy and getting really significant, often nation-leading legislation over the finish line. So I want to thank Liz and the parents and the young people that are gathered here today to join us. So it was important for me just to have a sit down with parents in my office and some of their children to just get a real sense of what's going on in their lives. I mean, what are they worried about? And the worries from when I was raising young teenagers, 13, 14-year-old, are vastly different. What a different world we live in now. And so I feel the stress on the parents of the unknown, that they're not able to identify who they're talking to, who their friends are, because they're not coming over to play after school. They're in an online site or a gaming site, and they don't know, is it just limited to their friends or other people from the outside infiltrating these sites and trying to either extract information from your kids or to prey on them or encourage them to go meet somebody. So all these things that are happening now as parents are just trying to deal with already challenging teenage years. And, you know, my heart goes out to them. That's why I want to stand at the forefront of this effort to really let them know that I'll support them and in their efforts to protect their kids as well. So we had 5 parents and 2 young people. And, you know, the question is, how do we get to a safer digital environment? You know, one of our young speakers said, when I go to social media, I just want to see my friends. I just want to be with my friends. Well, that's natural, and we should cultivate that. That should be what they're entitled to. And last 2 years, I'd say, from listening to individuals like those here and others across the state, I've done listening tours and roundtables on everything from cell phone distraction and social media algorithms all around the state. It is their voices that I'm listening to the most on how we devise our policies. So also, you know, we're not afraid of a fight here in New York. You know, we've taken on the world's biggest tech companies. We've passed, as I said, nation-leading laws to protect young people, banning addictive algorithms that manipulate our kids' minds, and the stories are incredible. The depression, the anxiety, the suicidal thoughts that often comes when, you know, a young person thinking about suicide, you know, goes to a site, looks up suicide, and instead of getting a place of relief and a place of comfort and a place of uplifting messages, they could be finding out how to commit suicide. So this is what's going on in real time. And we told the mega corporations, you will no longer monetize our kids' health. You cannot take personally identifying information from them and sell it. And so we banned that in New York. You can't profit from their personal data. And now, one thing we also did is kids are coming to school a little more rested, ready to learn, because we blocked overnight notifications. You know, knowing that the notification goes off all night long, and the average young person gets about 250 notifications per day. And again, as I mentioned, the cell phone ban, you know, when that first bell rings, the cell phones are tucked away and they don't come out until the day is over, the school day is over. And I just heard more stories today, you know, from parents and, you know, their friends who are teachers, other adults and people who are just knowing. I understand the enormous pressure on our young people and their parents to not have them be ostracized, not be the only one who's not allowed to have a cell phone. So I heard this over and over and over. I knew that I had to be the heavy. I had to be the one who would be willing to take on this fight. And my friends, it is one of the best fights I ever did, because the results were almost apparent immediately. The engagement of students with each other and teachers reporting that they're listening and paying attention in class, which is what they're supposed to do. So just in these last few months, it's been extraordinary. And, you know, classrooms and cafeterias are full of laughter and joy again, letting our kids be kids again. So what I did was, building on these other decisions and campaigns and advocacy and roundtables and policy changes and getting it over the finish line, you know, just when you think you're in a good place, the world continues to change again. So we're always going to have to be ahead of the threats that are out there for our young people, and our work is, you know, ongoing and sometimes feels like it's just beginning, because our young people are spending an enormous amount of time on social media platforms and gaming sites, and gaming platforms like Roblox and communication sites like Discord. Young people can easily be targeted by predators, easily. And they think they're in a safe space talking to just their friends that they invited in, but they don't know how to put the blocks on, and their parents don't know how to put the blocks on to keep the space they want to be in private. And so my State of the State address addressed this. and says, for the very first time, we're packaging a couple of ideas here. We're going to make sure that kids' privacy settings are set by default already, that parents don't have to try to figure out where are my kids going, what sites are they on, what games are they playing, and then try to figure out how to set the privacy settings. We're telling the companies, for a young person, someone under the age of 18, you will do this automatically, and we'll enforce that here in the state of New York. So that's one of our big initiatives, to lift that weight off our parents who have enough trying to monitor young people's lives as it is without having to go into this space. And perhaps for many it's the unknown, it's the wild frontier, and they know they need to do something, but they're just not sure what or how. And we're going to make that easier for them as well. So what does it mean? That means no direct messages from strangers. Kids can only communicate with actual friends and family to these apps and websites. And so we'll block kids' also location. Why do you want someone to know where your child is? I sure wouldn't. It's common sense precaution to make sure that they're protected from someone who could identify where they are and go to that home or outside the school and lure them. So, and also these strangers cannot be seeing the videos and photos that kids are posting either. They shouldn't be able to. They shouldn't be able to. The kids aren't expecting this to happen, and they should be protected from this. So we'll also disable the AI chatbots that we now know can cause serious mental health problems, even for adults. But kids sometimes have trouble distinguishing. They haven't had a boyfriend or girlfriend yet, and they develop an emotional attachment and kind of get lured into this space. And they can be taken advantage of. So we want to make sure also that parents have control over and oversight over kids' financial transactions. So you're not getting these bills and you're saying, how did this pop up on my credit card? So there's another way that we can help parents as well, because predators sometimes use in-game incentives to entice kids to follow them. So I'll say this. I'm proud of this fight. It's another big one. So we're taking on the tech giants. I will continue fighting for the safety and well-being of our children, and I'm proud to lead the fight. But literally, I want to give some good news here. Less than a month ago, I announced these proposals, just a few weeks ago. And I'm glad to say that since we did this and really put our stake in the ground of the fight we're willing to take on here in New York on behalf of our kids and their parents, that we've been a number of large social media companies have reached out to us, and gaming platforms are already taking notice of what we're doing, and we're starting to see signs of voluntary compliance, and they want to talk to us and get to a place. Now, we're not standing down for what we want to do, but those who are willing to understand the threats that we're seeing, that they should have known but are not stopping, we're going to say you can work with us and we'll stop these threats together. So they want to work with me, I'll open up my arms, but you don't, you're going to be seeing a lot of serious consequences. So, but we'll make sure, no matter what happens, even voluntarily, I want these passed and signed into law to codify, really just not these rights and our objectives, but also our values as New Yorkers and as parents. So again, to close, I'm proud to partner with Common Sense Media, all the other great advocates and the parents who step up and use their voices and their experiences, and the kids who are just as passionate about these issues as I am. And so happy to take any on-topic questions on this at this time.
Any on-topics, guys? All right, thanks. We'll excuse our appearance.
All right. Hey, thanks again.
Thank you so much, Governor.
You don't think there's too much snow, do you?
Thank you. Governor, thank you so much.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, guys, we have time for just a couple of topics. Hi, Governor.
Hi.
I'm curious. I saw you yesterday. You were talking about Mom Donnie's budget meeting, his presentation. He said, we're going to balance the budget. And, you said you were going to work with him. But could you say definitively if you're planning to give the city more money to contribute to that $12 billion deficit?
It is way too premature in our conversations to answer that. What we did was sit down with them, personally, but also my budget team has been meeting with them to acknowledge that this is a new administration, just getting in and lifting up the hood, seeing what's under it, what the gaps are, what the revenues are, which is important because the whole revenue picture is not clear, as we saw very pleasantly surprised that we had $17 billion more in revenues than we anticipated because of Wall Street. And also, are there areas for savings? Some programs that may not be working the way you anticipate. So we encourage them to take a good look at this. They have until the 17th of February to put together more of a package. And we talked about some areas where we can be of help as well. I mean, just right off the bat, offering $1.2 billion to work with them to achieve the objective of universal child care is a very big contribution. That is a big deal. So we have stepped up when the city has needed us. I also represent 8.5 million New York City residents, and I want this administration to be successful. So we'll work with them, with our team, their team, and it's a little bit early yet to say exactly what will or will not happen.
To follow up on that, are you concerned at all about the deficit itself, and also what do you think about his characterization that this is all a Mayor Adams problem? I know you had a good working relationship with Mayor Adams, and I know he wanted a little bit more money last year. Do you wish that you had reined in his spending at all, or taken a closer look at his spending when he was the mayor?
No, that's not something that the governor does. Is we allocate revenues based on specific programs or formulas, education formulas, Medicaid formulas, vouchers, housing vouchers. So we have done that, and that's why we have a state comptroller. That's why there is a city comptroller. These are the watchdogs. The city council is the watchdog as well. So I would say that, of course, my relationship was good because I think it's healthy when a governor and a mayor get along in furtherance of the goals of the city as well. So that's, I will look forward to working with this mayor, and however I want to identify how they arrived at this. They can characterize it any way they want. I'm very solution-oriented. Let's get to a place where you can get through what you need to do. We're going to get through what we need to do.
Governor, what's your reaction to the Chabad attack yesterday, and what can the state do to protect Jewish New Yorkers?
I was sickened by it. I called leaders in the community immediately and talked to them and said, I'm deploying more state police to sensitive locations like places of worship, synagogues around the state, because we don't know whether this is a trend, or if not even, if this is isolated, sometimes there's copycat cases. So we're continuing to invest money into our security grants. We've upped that number almost every year to give more money for synagogues and places that have often been targets, as well as I know this is investigation ongoing, and my hate crimes task force is involved as well. And I am sickened when acts like this happen. It just sends fear down the spines of everybody. The Jewish community has been under siege for thousands of years, but here in the state of New York, just a couple days ago, a rabbi in Queens, who I spoke to today, was assaulted, and verbally and physically. Everybody has the right to be safe in their streets and in the neighborhoods and the places they worship. Full stop. So we'll continue fighting hard against anti-Semitism and acts of violence like this where they rear their ugly heads. But all New Yorkers should be sickened by this and say that this is an outrage and stand up for each other. It's the time we should stand up together.
Great, thank you.
All right, thanks, everybody.